Well, I started when I was 11 years old, and I guess the involvement was there was 11 of us kids. My father died when I was 5 years old, so we went down there, and the town hired me to be a what do they call, a baler. They had a little round square net about this big around, and it would hold probably 7 or 8 fish. And there was a big spout that went across over to the fish house, and we used to stand in, throw them up in the back, on the backboard. It had like a screen, like a basketball thing. And we used to throw fish up into that, and that would float them over to the fish house. And then after probably, when I got to be up 15, then I become a dipper. And we had a net that would hold about a bushel of fish. And they took 2 guys, one on each side of the dipping pool, and had probably an 8-foot handle on it. And we'd get side by side, and you put your net side by side and push them up to the header, and then you pick your net up and dump them into a bin.
People came from everywhere when the alewives ran. I can remember they would be parked all over Damriscotta Mills. They came from everywhere, all over the country, because it was a real sight to see. It's quite a phenomenon to see those fish come in and see them race their way up to the lake with such strength it takes to make it up through that ladder. And it was fascinating for everyone, and many people would say they came back year after year and brought their children and their grandchildren because it was such a fascinating thing.
Well, it was very important to me. I had a lot of friends, and it was important to them too. They'd always wait, just couldn't wait for that fish stream to open so we could go to work. Because I didn't do anything all winter but take care of my children.
Times were really hard back in the late 30s, early 40s, even late 40s, and early 50s. People didn't have a lot of money. And this was a time when you got a chance to pay off the winter debts by working at the fish stream. So it really was a big economic boost to Damriscotta Mills and Newcastle. When it was fish season, you knew it was time to go process the fish. You could see the women coming from all over town with their rubber boots, their long aprons. They all had their hair tied in a bandana with the point in the front and tied up like this to keep the fish scurry from the hair. They all had their gloves in their hand and their lunchbox. And you'd see them all trudging through town on their way down to the fish house. They would run the scalers. It was a big round bin, big. It was like, looked like a cement truck would look like to me now, only it had holes in it. And that would go round and round and round, and it would take the scales off the fish. The platform was large enough for 2 women. On this platform in front of them would be like a big belt, probably 6 inches. And on that belt was like wooden slots. And between the slots, the one woman would place the fish on its side. And the belt would rotate, and there were saws that would cut the head off and the tail off. And those fish then would go into a little bin, and the next woman, who was, I think she was down 1 step from the first woman, she would take those fish and put them down through another machine that was a slot, and it would slit the fish in 2, fillet them out, put the fillets in one trough. There were big watering troughs down below, 2 of them. One the innards would go into, and the other one the fillets would go into.
The guys used to tell us girls jokes and laugh, and that was the day because it was so long a day. Sometimes we'd have to work on the machines all day long, and sometimes we'd only work on them in the morning, and then we'd skin in the afternoon. It wasn't bad, you know, it was money. And people would come in sometimes and say, "Ooh, that smells horrible." And I said, "Yeah, but the money don't smell."
Well, surplus fish was the big volume. And these were put up in barrels. And they'd have a layer of of fish, a layer of salt, a layer of fish, a layer of salt, a layer of fish. And then these barrels were set aside until the season was all over. Then they dumped the barrels out and wash the fish all off, and wash off the scales and wash off any other debris. Then they'd repack them nicely in these barrels with a layer of fish and a layer of salt. And one of our principal markets was the West Indies and Haiti. Well, Nelson Hancock worked in Bath Iron Works, in the metal work, and he figured out there ought to be a much more efficient way of harvesting alewives and all that dip netting. And he's the one that developed the setup very much like we have now, where we have two great big metal mechanical dippers side by side. And I'm so proud of Nelson Hancock that he came up, and right off the very first year he was amazed, everybody was, how beautifully they worked. Regulations had it established that every widow was entitled to 2 bushels of alewives, and 2 bushels of alewives would be 200 alewives about, quite a lot of fish. Well, of course, back in those early days, they didn't have very good refrigeration, and they couldn't freeze the fish up. So generally the widows or the very poor people who were entitled to get their 2 bushels apiece for free, they would take the 2 bushels over to the smokehouses and have them all smoked up.
2 years ago, my sister, Sally Mulligan, and I took over smoking the alewives at the smokehouse in the mills. Previously, my husband smoked the alewives, and before that, my father. Sawdust is used to tamp down the fires in the smoking process because the fish aren't actually cooked during this process. Willie Oliver was the alewife king. We used to sell alewives for him when we were kids for a small commission. I don't remember just how much, but it was a very small commission. The alewives were sold by the string, 10 fish to a string.
Our job during fish season was on the weekends. This is when people came from everywhere. And we always used to try to get up early and get the best spot, because if you got the best spot, you sold the most fish. And we used to get like a penny or 2 cents a fish for selling the fish for the men who had smoked them. The kids would take tea boxes, big boxes that they used to ship tea in, and they were wonderful. They were like a big square table, and they took those upside down, and that's what the kids would use to display their alewives, and the alewives were on those sticks.
I remember when the alewife festival first started, it was one day on a Sunday, and then the next year it was 2 days, and that was Saturday and Sunday. The last one that they had, they rented 2 great big tents, and it went for 7 days. And it rained so hard the whole 7 days that nobody showed up. And so they went in the hole. They chose the alewife queen. They'd have 4 or 5 runners up, like they do for the state, one thing or another, Miss America.
The alewife festival was held in the mid-50s, and I remember waking up that morning and hearing loud music coming. And I said, oh, I gotta get dressed and I gotta get down there. This is really exciting. And it was. They had a queen, and they served alewives out of the big tent, an alewife dinner, and they had music. It was a very exciting time.